In 1952, a premier American train ascended into the Sierra Nevada, carrying 226 jubilant passengers, champagne in hand, convinced of their unstoppable journey. Unexpectedly, hurricane-force winds engulfed the entire 15-car streamliner in snow so profound and dense that it dislodged the engines from the tracks. For 3 days, the passengers endured a freezing darkness, caught between the perils of oxygen depletion and succumbing to the cold. Every rescue attempt faltered. Only a specialized machine, predating the Titanic, could forge a path through what had become an icy mass grave. The events at Donner Pass transformed opulent travel into a desperate struggle for survival, and the ultimate rescue became etched in legend. The city of San Francisco was more than a mere train. It functioned as a moving hotel, a vibrant nightclub, a veritable palace on wheels. Its 15 cars extended nearly a quarter of a mile, gleaming in yellow and silver as it journeyed westward from Chicago towards the Pacific. Inside, plush carpets muffled footsteps, and crystal chandeliers gently swayed with each curve. Club cars buzzed with laughter and the clinking of glasses. Attentive waiters in pristine uniforms poured champagne and served prime rib as the snow-capped Sierra Nevada vistas streamed past the windows. This was the pinnacle of American rail travel, with the city of San Francisco its most prized possession. Passengers reclined in expansive leather armchairs, observing the world outside in a comforting haze of luxury and assurance. Among them were businessmen pursuing deals, families with children mesmerized by passing pine trees, soldiers on leave, a few politicians, and elegant society women adorned in fur collars, their luggage piled high with hat boxes and trunks. The train's crew operated with seamless precision. Porters meticulously prepared beds with crisp sheets in the Pullman sleepers. Stewards managed dinner reservations and announced the evening's menu: oysters Rockefeller, roast duck, and baked Alaska. In the observation car, a jazz melody played softly as the sun descended behind the mountains. The sole concern for passengers was whether another round of drinks would arrive before the next tunnel. The pride of Southern Pacific extended beyond its polished exterior. This was a $2 million streamliner, engineered for velocity and comfort, propelled by 4 diesel locomotives capable of reaching 110 miles per hour on flat terrain. The company proudly asserted that no storm could impede them, confident in modern engineering and a schedule that traversed the continent in under 40 hours. The engineers trusted their machinery, and the passengers trusted the railroad. Even as the initial snowflakes began to fall outside, no one doubted their seamless passage over the Sierra, just as it had always been. Yet, as the train ascended, the scenery transformed. Pine trees grew denser along the tracks. The sky, which had been brilliantly blue at the station, turned heavy and gray. Nevertheless, within the dining car, spirits remained high. Toasts were exchanged for new beginnings, anniversaries, and safe arrivals. While winter enveloped the outside world, inside, the city of San Francisco felt invulnerable, a sanctuary of warmth, light, and certainty, pressing westward into the mountains as if impervious to any mishap. The initial sign of impending trouble manifested as the train rounded a blind bend near Yuba Pass. The wind assailed the cars with a force that vibrated the windows and sent snow swirling past the headlight in sheets. Outside, the blizzard was no longer a picturesque backdrop. It was a horizontal wall of snow moving at nearly 100 miles per hour. In less than an hour, snowdrifts had accumulated to depths of 8, 10, even 12 feet across the tracks. This snow was not light or powdery. Propelled by the wind, it was compressed into slabs as rigid as concrete, each gust fusing new layers onto the obstruction. Up front, engineer Tom Sapinor witnessed the signals disappear behind a curtain of white. The locomotive's diesel engines strained as he advanced the throttle, but the wheels found no purchase. Sapinor shifted the controls into reverse, hoping to dislodge the train. The cars groaned and shuddered, but the underlying snow remained unyielding. Each attempt to move forward or backward only embedded the wheels deeper until the train's frame itself began to lift. 200 tons of steel and glass became marooned on a frozen reef. Sapinor made another attempt, redistributing weight between the engines, cautiously engaging the throttle, coaxing the train as if it were a living entity. Nothing availed. The snow, compacted by wind and compressed by the train's own mass, formed a cradle that elevated the entire consist off the rails. The wheels spun fruitlessly in midair, flinging ice but gaining no traction. Within minutes, the city of San Francisco ceased to be a functioning train. It was a stranded relic, immobilized by the immutable laws of physics and the relentless weather. The storm outside raged incessantly. Gusts battered the car exteriors, causing the walls to vibrate like drumheads. The snowdrifts rose higher, engulfing the steps, then the lower windows, then the doors. Snow infiltrated every crevice, filling vents and compacting itself into the undercarriage. Sapinor radioed the conductor. The engines were operational, but the train was immobile. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The previous luxury and confidence of the journey were supplanted by a palpable tension. Passengers peered at the windows, now frosted over, beginning to grasp that the outside world was no longer mere scenery. The train's mechanical heart continued to hum, but the sense of control had vanished. Every attempt to break free merely affirmed the reality. The city of San Francisco was entrapped, not by a simple delay, but by the raw, indifferent power of a Sierra blizzard. Here, in the shadow of Donner Pass, the mountain exerted ultimate dominion. Dr. Walter Rohel navigated the narrow aisle, his breath condensing in the frigid air. He paused beside a woman slumped in her seat, her face pallid, her eyes unfocused. Nearby, 2 children complained of severe headaches. The air within the Pullman car had turned noxious, tainted with an oily, metallic odor. It wasn't solely the encroaching cold. Something else was silently infiltrating the walls. The engines, still idling beneath tons of snow, were meant to be their last hope. However, as the drifts climbed higher, they suffocated the vents and muffled the exhaust. Diesel fumes, colorless and lethal, began to back up into the cars. Passengers became disoriented and nauseous. Some stumbled bewilderedly to the restrooms. A railroad employee, checking the sleeping cars, emerged barely able to stand. Dr. Rohel recognized the symptoms: carbon monoxide poisoning. There was no time for deliberation. He immediately ordered the engines shut down, even as the interior temperature plummeted. The decision landed like a pronouncement of doom. The last hum of machinery faded, replaced by silence and the distant howl of the wind. Within minutes, the warmth dissipated. Frost crept across the glass. People wrapped themselves in anything available: curtains torn from brass rods, tablecloths pilfered from the dining car. In the kitchen, staff dismantled wooden chairs and fed them into the stove, coaxing a meager warmth for coffee. The elegant compartments, with their mahogany panels and velvet seats, transformed into makeshift refuges against the deepening darkness. Rohul and the 5 army nurses moved through the train, checking pulses, counting breaths, urging people to remain conscious. They guided the ill and frightened into 2 Pullman cars where a portable propane heater offered a glimmer of relief. The danger of poisoning receded, but now the cold pressed in relentlessly. Pipes froze. Toilets ceased to function. The battery-powered lights dimmed to an orange glow, then extinguished altogether. In the darkness, people huddled together, listening to the snow accumulate outside, awaiting any sound from the external world. It was a choice between an unseen poison and the certainty of freezing. For the first time, The passengers grasped the gravity of being trapped in Donner Pass, not by hunger, but by the very air they breathed and the pervasive cold. Curtains vanished from the windows, torn down and wrapped around shivering bodies. The velvet that once framed mountain vistas now served as makeshift blankets, draped over shoulders and tucked around legs. Tablecloths disappeared from the dining car, pressed into service as scarves and hoods. Even the thick napkins, emblazoned with the Southern Pacific logo, found new utility stuffed into coat sleeves and shoes to block drafts. In the kitchen, staff pried apart wooden chairs and broke up crates, feeding splintered mahogany into the stove. The fire was weak, the coffee thin, but the ritual of warmth superseded its taste. Passengers queued with tin cups, hands trembling, grateful for any heat that could be coaxed from the diminishing pile of kindling. The Pullman compartments, once private sanctuaries, filled with strangers pressed shoulder to shoulder. People huddled in silence, their breath fogging in the cold air. Some attempted to maintain morale, singing fragments of old songs, recounting tales of Californian summers or childhood winters in Chicago. But the pervasive darkness stifled most conversation. The battery lights flickered, then died, leaving only the faint orange glow from the kitchen fire and the dim blue light of snow pressing against the glass. It was impossible to distinguish night from day. Dr. Rohal and the army nurses moved from car to car, checking on the elderly and the sick. They distributed aspirin, urged people to keep moving, to stamp their feet and rub their hands. Frost began to creep across the inside of the windows. Pipes froze solid. Toilets overflowed. The air grew stale, heavy with the scent of sweat, coffee, and fear. Some passengers wept quietly. Others sat rigid, staring into the dark, counting the hours. Food was rationed. The kitchen staff prepared thin soup from whatever meager provisions remained. Canned beans, crackers, bits of ham. Children received the last of the milk. Adults chewed on cold bread, careful not to voice complaints. Every sound from outside, the groan of wind, the shifting of snow, felt like a threat. The train remained silent, except for the occasional cough or the clatter of a pot in the galley. The sense of privilege had evaporated. What endured was a stubborn resilience, a refusal to capitulate, even as the relentless cold pressed in from all directions. Deep within the Sierra Nevada, the bustling city of San Francisco was no longer a thriving metropolis, but a besieged vessel, with its inhabitants clinging to survival, awaiting liberation from the mountain's icy embrace. In the Sierra's formidable snowdrifts, conventional plows proved utterly inadequate. Standard wedge plows, prevalent across America's railway networks, relied on sheer force, smashing into snowbanks and pushing them aside. This method was effective as long as there was space for the displaced snow. However, when snowdrifts reached heights of 15 to 20 feet, compressing into walls as sturdy as concrete, the wedge plows simply stalled. The snow remained unyielding, clamping down tighter and immobilizing the steel machinery. San Francisco found itself isolated by an impenetrable barrier that even modern diesel engines couldn't breach. The only hope rested with an artifact from a bygone era, the rotary snowplow. Introduced in 1869, this machine bore little resemblance to the sleek locomotives it was intended to salvage. At its forefront was an 8-foot-wide steel disc fitted with curved blades reminiscent of an antediluvian creature's maw. Driven by a steam engine, this cutterhead rotated at speeds up to 150 revolutions per minute. Instead of compacting snow, it pulverized it. The rapidly spinning blades shredded the drifts into fine powder, then ejected the fragmented snow through a chute, launching it 100 feet clear of the tracks. Each pass excavated a tunnel wide enough for a train, regardless of the snow's depth. Within the Rotary's cabin, the crew toiled amidst stifling heat, plumes of steam, and the incessant tremor of the cutter head. They meticulously managed the throttle and gears, keenly aware that a single error could prove catastrophic. Should the blade encounter a concealed rock or a buried tree, the impact could shatter the steel disc, transforming it into deadly shrapnel. Operating a rotary was akin to riding a loaded cannon. Every mile was a gamble, yet nothing else could loosen the mountain's hold. The raw power of the rotary was the solitary answer to the Sierra's profound silence. Against the frozen barricade, it stood as the ultimate guardian between existence and annihilation. Rotary Snowplow number 7222 idled at the mountain's base, steam escaping from every joint, its cutter head blurring into a vortex of steel teeth. Propelled by the mallet locomotive, the rotary advanced at a sluggish pace, 1 mile per hour, sometimes even slower. Each foot gained was a struggle. The engine's roar was eclipsed by the grinding cacophony, the shriek of steel against ice echoing through the surrounding timber. Snow, as dense as granite, disintegrated into powder, erupting from the chute in white geysers that arched 100 feet above the submerged tracks. Inside the cabin, engineer Roland Raymond braced himself against the relentless vibrations. The cab rattled like a tin can in a hailstorm. Each time the blade struck a hidden branch or a rock fragment, the entire machine shuddered, threatening to tear itself apart. The men were acutely aware of the perils. If the cutter head jammed or fragmented, the rotary could become a lethal bomb. Yet they pressed on with the controls, their eyes burning from steam and sweat, carving a passage through what seemed like the world's end. Progress was intermittent and arduous. At times, the snow engulfed the plow to its roof, necessitating manual excavation by the crew. On other occasions, the machine lurched forward, only to stall as the weight of the next drift bore down on its blades. For hours, the rotary painstakingly ascended the pass, forging a path where no other machine could venture. Then, catastrophe struck. A massive snowslide cascaded down from the ridge, slamming into the rotary and its crew. The cabin vanished beneath tons of ice. When the snow settled, Engineer Raymond was gone, buried alive, the first and sole casualty of the rescue operation. The remaining crew members dug frantically with their bare hands, but the mountain maintained its inexorable grip. The other rotaries soldiered on, each mile a test of grit and endurance. By the afternoon of January 16th, the cutter head finally breached the last obstruction. For the first time in 3 days, a shaft of light pierced the darkness inside the train. Passengers pressed their faces against the windows, watching the locomotive's headlight glimmer through the frost. The profound silence was shattered by a triumphant cheer. The mountain had been conquered, not by swiftness or opulence, but by the relentless grinding might of steel. Even today, when winter buries the tracks at Donner Pass, railroads continue to rely on rotary snowplows, some still powered by century-old designs, to forge a path through conditions that high-tech engines cannot withstand. Nature's grip has not loosened, and our most advanced machines still defer to these venerable behemoths when snow descends. In the ongoing conflict between innovation and the elements, the past is not obsolete. It is indispensable. If a tempest were to come back, what would you rely on?